Meyerson and Grant Sloss, and I need to set this up simultaneously on my Zoom, so hold please. We are about to start. Grant, say hello to the pretty people.
Hi, pretty people.
Hopefully you guys are pretty, and
of course they
are. Everybody's beautiful. Okay, we are live. In two places. This is like a simulcast.
There we
This is
go.
like so pro. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. After our discussion, if you have questions, Greg is gonna be monitoring the YouTube on his phone. We'll be monitoring the Zoom on my computer. We're gonna be looking all over the place because there's cameras everywhere.
There really are.
And there are some people too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two. And we're both on screen, so we're pretty, I'm like totally like encroaching on his space.
I'll let you know if it's...
We're just trying to stay on camera on the vertical. So welcome, Grant. Amazingly enough, after years of seeing you sometimes, probably 3 to 5 times a week, I haven't seen you but once in 4 years live.
At least, yeah.
Hello, pandemic. So besides your 40th birthday, when you decided to challenge all your friends with a yoga class.
I did. They loved it.
We've been working online ever since then, which was rocky at first. I remember the first class. It was like, oh, that was horrible. But I think
this is what we do.
We've hit our stride. So it's amazing to have you here. I'm like in person and like real life. Grant, guys, so Grant started practicing with me. We just figured out 16 years ago. I feel like we do this math every few months.
We have to, yeah.
Just to reiterate.
There's no counter up anywhere, so we have to just remember telling the story, yeah.
Right, and remember like where were we in life at that point? And I was a teacher at Bryan Kest Power Yoga in Santa Monica, and at the time, I was pretty much the only one at the studio teaching arm balances and inversions, which was so egotistically ungratifying for most. But I did have a handful of core people, no pun intended, such as Grant. And I want to start by Grant telling you a little bit, I know this is going to seem like a tangent, but a little bit of his professional story, because honestly, success on the mat, and I say this all the time, is so intricately tied to the success that we have off the mat. Now, Grant, you are a writer, producer on can we say the name of the show?
Yeah, we can say the name of the show.
You can say the name of the show.
I'm a co-executive producer on a Netflix show called Emily in Paris. I was not that when I met Shana 16 years ago. I was not that at all. In fact, I was unemployed. So I had 2008, I had just left my job working in a studio, which I thought was my dream job and realized very quickly it wasn't. And because I wasn't working, I could now arm balances, but like just pushing people. It felt like most classes I went to there were very good, but there were, when you've got 20, 30 people, you don't have time to do like all this instruction. And so it was very much like you knew what you were getting, and I think that's why people liked to do it. But something just shifted in my brain when you were like, jump out of a down dog into a handstand, and I was like, no, why? You can't do that. And you were like, try it. And after some work, it turned out I could. And now I almost never leave a down dog any other way than a handstand.
Right.
Or an attempt at a handstand.
I know, it's funny because in my classes, I always have them stepping the first two. Or stepping forward after the sun salutations, and I've told you this, but working with you is sort of like working with a puppy dog. He's always so eager for the next thing and so excited. And I know that the stepping forward, you're like, "Aw, do I have to step?"
I've gotten better. Yeah.
But like when that third one comes and you're like, this is the like it's just like rev up your engines. But let's take a step back. So you were unemployed, and guys, I'm taking zero credit for this life path. I just want you to understand the type of person and the type of character it takes to be like not just so successful on the mat, but off the mat. Let me just say really quickly also, because not everybody lives in LA or in Hollywood. When you want to work in TV, it's not like you're like, I'm going to work in TV, and you go to Darren Star and you're like, here's my resume. Like,
you can try that, but you will probably be greeted with a restraining order. So I don't recommend it.
What he has accomplished is so far beyond what a normal person can conceive of as far as a career is concerned. So let's talk about, so you get so you're unemployed, and then you're not unemployed. So what happened?
So then, yeah, I left movies and I wanted to work in TV, which you think like, yeah, I got a job in movies. I can find a job in TV. Not the easiest transition to make, but I made it. And I got a job as a writer's assistant, which is sort of like the first building block in getting onto a writing staff and moving up it. However, the only way you move up is if your show stays on the air a couple of seasons, and that gives them enough time to promote you. And I landed on 6 shows in 5 years that all got canceled, or they got rid of the head writer and a new writer came in and hired their own writing staff. And so I kept like getting close, and then knocked back down to starting over.
There's some parallels.
I was gonna say,
handstand.
It's
like just fill in like handstand with writing
job. And it took a long time. There were plenty of times when I was like, I don't know, why am I doing this? Maybe I should like not do this. But for whatever reason, I kept at it, and then I finally found one. I found the 7th job in 6 years that actually lasted more than a season, and lo and behold, everything opened up, and I started moving up the ladder, which is sort of how it works in television. You get a staff writing job, and then you move up to story editor or co-producer or producer, and it's one by one you start climbing the ladder. But it all would have gone away if I walked away from it at any point. There was no version of that included me stopping.
So I know the math is off by 1 because I'm really good at math, but it was like Bruce Lee or something. It's one of those like karate people who said fall 7 times, get up 8. It sounds like you fell 6 times and got up 7.
There you go.
But I'm going to give you that extra credit because I know how hard you've worked. But most people in this world, in your situation, one of 2 things happens. Most people quit. I mean, 6 times, like you just, at some point you're like, yeah, maybe this isn't.
Well, at some point I was like, the problem's me. Like I'm cursing these shows, and I'm endangering other people's ability to earn a living by joining their shows.
Right. But the second thing that happens a lot, or at least I've seen, is people who become lifelong assistants. Like they don't really have, like they think they want to be writers, but they don't really take the steps necessary to be anything other than an assistant, and they become sort of complacent in this role.
Which, by the way, if you're good at that and that's a job you want, is a totally valid life choice. Like
100%.
But the writer's assistant job is not designed for that. They don't pay you anything because they know everybody wants that job.
Right.
But yeah, that happens. Both of those versions have happened to numerous aspiring writers that I've known. Some of them give up. Some of them stay at it, and they're assistants for a decade more. And that's hard.
Yeah. So obviously my experience was different from yours because I used to be in the motion picture industry in the talent agency at ICM, which back in the 90s was, the number 2 of the big 3. And maybe you can tell me how different it was. It was like peon is like a good word to like describe it.
That's like a polite word to describe it.
It's,
yeah.
It's very, 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 well, I mean, mine happen to be abused, like downright abusive. They're not all abusive, but like you are, like they make it very clear you are the lowest person on the totem pole.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, in order to get to where you are, which is like an executive or co-executive producer on a top show, you only get there by willing to swallow your pride.
Several times.
Yeah.
Sometimes several times a day.
And to really be willing to start from the bottom. I think that if we could sort of shift this back into specifically handstands, not just the metaphors for handstands, that a lot of people do not want to do the foundational work. They want to do a handstand. And it's like nobody walks in and becomes a staff writer. First, you got to do like the most humiliating,
boring, unexciting work. Yeah.
But you know that is getting you where you want to go. And so that's what got you to the 7th. And plus, I'm giving you the extra credit, that 8th point that got you to where you are today.
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to be willing. I tell people this when they ask how they want to get into that business. I'm like, you do have to, like, it is a stepping stone, but you do have to be good at that job if anybody's going to promote you higher than that. Because if you're not good at that, there's no proof that, you've given me no proof that I should put you at a higher level. Which I think is sort of similar to the handstand thing. It's like, if you can't do those basic things, you're probably going to hurt yourself if you try to advance past it too quickly. I'm not speaking from experience there because I have yet to hurt myself in a handstand. It's safe if you do it right, if you have somebody who knows what they're doing teaching you.
I mean, I'm just thinking about like the very words building blocks. It involves building. Like you take building blocks and you take out the bottom one and your structure is going to collapse.
That's correct.
And so like the childlike wonderment with which you like approach handstands. Let me ask you a question. Like, I get the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, because when every class, like when it's handstand time, it's like handstand time. I feel like you really love handstands. Like it's a bit of a passion.
Yeah, I think I was saying this before we started. When I found you at that studio, you were the only one really pushing people to go further, not just handstands, but just everybody else seemed like secure in doing the things they had always done, and you were like, no, I think you can do more than that, and that was like, I saw it as a challenge, which I liked. Yeah. And also that you were willing to like teach me and like take like time to give me actual concrete steps to do something, and that's fun. Like it should be fun. I think if you want to go to a class and do the same poses you've always done and that fills you, that's great. That doesn't do it for me. I want to push past it and see what else I'm capable of. So
and like you're one of the few people I've worked with who I know who like just knows intrinsically that you're capable of anything. Like most people, when I say, let's say, jump to the front of the mat, and they jump to the front of the mat, it doesn't, the handstand is like, no, like it's just not there, or they fall over or whatever. Most people are like, okay, and they walk to, pitter patter to the front of the mat. But like you always, if the jump doesn't work, you do it again. Like it's just second nature to you that you approach challenges not as stumbling blocks.
That's right.
They're definitely not stumbling blocks. But you approach them as challenges should be. Like the point of a challenge is to overcome it.
Yeah, there's no, I don't think, any yoga teachers that are trying to like humiliate you by giving you something you can't do. Like it is all in the spirit of like growth and development. And if you look at it as somebody trying to like punish you or make you embarrassed or whatever, and I've had that feeling before where somebody's like, do this, like, and I know and I can't, and I'm like, oh, you just want to like see me fail, and that's not. As soon as you have to switch that mentality, or you're just gonna get bitter and angry all
Right.
the time. Yeah.
Right. And
I'm thinking about high school sports right now. This is not about anybody in the room.
so what sports did you play in high school?
I played a little bit of everything. I played basketball, baseball, tennis, track. I played a lot, and I played soccer growing up quite a bit. None of them well,
Okay.
but like I played them.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
a natural and lifelong athlete. How easily did handstands come to you, or difficultly?
I also took dance classes when I was like age 3 to let's say 6. And that actually was a mean teacher that I think internalized, like, oh, you want to punish me with whatever you're trying to make me do. But it did get me comfortable going upside down. I used to watch TV in a headstand for like 20 minutes at a time, and my mom was always like, is that okay? Like, do you feel bad? And I was like, no, it feels good. So I've never been scared of upside down, and I think some people are just intrinsically. Yeah. So that was never a hurdle for me to get over. Like that, I got over that pretty early, and in fact enjoyed it really early.
Right.
But I remember going to classes, and even in just a headstand, and people would be like, oh, I'm really scared upside down, and I was like, I don't know what that feels like.
Right. What about when you started again in your 20s? Like, what did, like, your first handstand, do you remember? Not even in the middle of the room, just like kicking up to the wall.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of kicking up to the wall, and that felt fun. Like, I think I had to build up the like upper body strength to hold it for very long at first. But I got used to that pretty quickly, and then would try. And then when I started working with you was the first time I was really trying it in the middle of a room, because there were just, most classes don't give you that opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I would do it, and I remember just how wobbly it felt, and how I didn't really know how to make it stable and steady. I was just sort of like, well, maybe this time
baby
it's gonna
giraffe.
baby giraffe. This time it's gonna balance.
Let me just add that Grant is like 105 feet tall, which like he almost hit his head on the door coming into my apartment like that.
True.
I only say that because like in a handstand, it makes a huge difference, because you have that much extra body and body weight that you need to balance in space. So there's not a lot of how tall are they? 6'4"?
6'4".
There's not a lot of 6'4" handstanders out there.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some somewhere, and I that I don't think about, because I don't know what it feels like to do it in a smaller body. Yeah. So if you are 6'4", don't let that stop you. You can do it.
Absolutely.
It's very easy. It's not very easy. It takes a lot of work, but
Scratch
it
that.
becomes easy.
Yeah. Again, like, you're always up for a challenge, and the fear factor, I mean, for most people who are not handstanding in the middle of the room, it's not the strength, it's not the flexibility, it's not even the balance, it's the fear. And I learned a quote last year that I think is one of my favorite quotes of all time, and it's fear is faith in the negative.
Yeah.
Which means the opposite of that is faith.
Yeah.
In the positive, like
Right.
faith.
Yeah.
So if we're so scared that we're going to hurt ourselves, it's because we truly believe we're going to hurt ourselves. Otherwise, why do it? But there's always a space to work on it that is safe, and it's all it really is turning off the ego and being willing to go back to those baby steps, those building blocks, those foundational elements. Maybe looking stupid, maybe not, being the most graceful person in the room, but there's always a place where it's going to be safe. It's not the route that you usually take. Usually I'm like, can you try this? And you're like, yes.
Well, why not?
Well, I mean, one of my favorite stories with you, and let me preface this by saying that, so for many years, we were actually in class before the pandemic, and Grant was, how do I put it, the leader and also the cheerleader of the class. He was very generous with his energy, because like he was one of the few people who were handstanding, but he also took a lot of time to like encourage other people. I'm thinking about Nacha in particular. And I know it really lifted people up. You were such an anchor in that community. But the two funny things is, A, because you were so advanced, everybody always followed you. And it's only funny because sometimes he would be doing like completely the wrong thing, and it was like a weird game of Simon Says, because like I'd be saying do something, he heard something else, and they're like, I think I heard something else, but Grant's not doing that. So like the whole class would do like not what I was saying, but like whatever it was that he was doing.
I'm sorry.
It was so funny, but there was one big exception.
Which one?
This one was when the tables were turned, when Team Scandinavia showed up.
Oh yeah.
And it was these like 5 people from like Norway, or I don't know.
I don't know how they got there. I don't know.
They randomly showed up, and this is when it was a private class. Like I wasn't even like at a studio at that point per se. We were renting a studio, and they came in, and they were like this traveling road show or something. And so they were really advanced. I said, okay, well we'll do handstand, or I said to them, have you done handstand to Ekapada Kundanyasana? And I believe you hadn't. But
I had tried it, but I had not landed it. Yeah.
Right. And so they're like, I don't even remember, I don't think they had tried it at all either, but they all were just like, woo, like they just like floated in.
They constantly kept saying how inexperienced and bad they were, and then just nailed every single thing you threw at them. It was infuriating.
But what happened, you saw them and you're like, and you nailed it. You nailed it.
And it actually worked, finally. I can't explain that psychologically, but other than I felt challenged. It's like I have to do it.
I think that when it comes to personal growth, that community really actually plays a role.
Okay.
Like even in a solo activity like yoga, you know, that you're still being surrounded by other people's energies and efforts. And we had a unique class because everybody talked the whole time. Like it wasn't like this really like.
We also did class in a circle.
Yeah.
With all the mats facing each other, which I don't think I've ever seen in a yoga studio before, but it was actually really nice.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people like to go to a class, stare straight ahead, and not make eye contact with anybody, which is like a self-conscious thing and whatever. But we all knew each other well enough by that point that we were like, yeah, we're just gonna be looking at each other the entire class, and who cares? It was great.
Yeah, but it was unique. It's funny. I mean, I did that because that's how I do it with children. And I'm like, well, you know, why not? I think it's a great, fun community builder, and also breaks down barriers, right? Because when I'm looking at someone's face instead of their back, that's like a whole new level of not just accountability, but also connection.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just curious, and I have no idea what the answer is to this. Like, how did, like, particularly that community, like there was the Yurties, that was like a very special time when we were in the yurt. That group was a spectacular group. And then we had the Moore dance studio where all the kids from UCLA started coming. Those are two, and of course before that we had the Bryan Kest group. So how do you feel like community either helped you or did it not help you? How did it like affect your process of like mastering, let's say handstand, like a really hard?
Yeah, I think having a sense of community with those people was great because I was never afraid or embarrassed to fall down in front of them, because that happened all the time. And not just because of like the mutually assured destruction of they were gonna fall too, but just because like I knew they didn't care. Nobody was there to like perform for anybody.
Right.
I've been to some classes, not just yoga, but just like fitness classes in general. People show up to like show out.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I think you also see other people, one, like roll their eyes because they find that annoying, but also they shrink a little bit because they're like, oh, I can't do the thing they're doing, so never mind. And I never got that feeling in this community because everybody was just there. Everybody was practicing within themselves and they were doing what they could do and trying to grow, but also wasn't like angry that somebody else was doing something they couldn't.
Yeah.
You know, like when we would watch, who could do the twisted?
The Pashasana?
Yeah.
Was I even teaching Pashasana back then?
Well, very
couldn't
rarely,
do it.
but I think Nachi
Oh,
could do
Nachi,
it. Yeah,
yes.
just the easiest
That's right.
thing in the world, and the rest of us couldn't get close to it.
Right.
Or like watching Ross do backbends that my body would never be able to do, or watching Melissa stand upright in a armless shoulder stand.
Right.
Like I think the nice thing about it was everybody had different strengths and everybody could do things that other people couldn't do. And so nobody ever got this sense of any sort of hierarchy. It was just like, we can all do certain things, and some days we're gonna do things that you can do better, and some days it's things I can do better. So it wasn't like a test, and it wasn't like competition. It was just like, we're here to like explore and figure out what we can do, which was nice.
I think that another aspect of that was that all of you were in there were people who came into that class who had never practiced before.
Mm-hmm.
They were in the same room as you, like jumping into your handstands. And it took a special person to even stay in that class, but there were people with literally no experience who just kept sticking it out and kept coming back. And on that note, I have my full Monty classes on Vimeo, which is what I do every day pretty much. And I have to be honest, you're the only person who's ever told me that you actually, like everybody else, like I turned it on, I did like 10 minutes and I turned it off.
It does start out very
accessible.
Yeah. No, it is. But like, with all the push-ups and the first like 10 minutes are sort of like a test. Like, if you're gonna get through it or not.
That's my warm-up.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly. I could see people going through that and being like, oh, I can't do another hour and a half of this. But you can. I'm proof that you can. But it's not easy.
But I know also, you've told me that it's not that you have mastered all of these skills.
Not even a little. No.
It's just that, again, like you have this like perseverance about you that it's just simply rare. And I think that for anybody who wants to master handstands, it takes this. It takes the guy who falls, gets up, and like a puppy dog is like, what's next? Throw me the next bone. You're always not just open to, you're always asking for instruction, for feedback. You're always eager to take the next step, to listen. Like, I have to be honest, because you're so advanced, sometimes like I feel uncomfortable. Like, I always say an up dog, pull the shoulders back. I'm like, Shana, don't say that again. And I'm like, I'm gonna offend him. He's so advanced already. But you have never been taken aback by feedback. You have never been offended by feedback. You're always like, oh, okay. You're always like, okay, how can I apply this?
Yeah,
And
I've never openly been offended by feedback. Let's go.
Oh.
No, like there's definitely moments when I hear it when I'm like, I know. But like if I'm doing something wrong, like it is your job to tell me that. So like keep telling me that. That's fine.
Right, but like if I say, like last night when we were talking about, handstand into Akapada Bakasana, you're like, how should I approach it?
Yeah, it's like, can you explain that? Because the way I was doing it was not working.
Right, but you're just like, okay, that.
I mean, well, I think it helps with all of these things to demystify it, to just ask somebody who knows how to do it. Like, what are the actual steps? Because to watch something like that, we're talking about lowering from a handstand and then one knee lands on your tricep and the other thigh lands on this one. To see it, I couldn't replicate it. I needed you to tell me like, first do this, then do this, then do this, focus on this. But that's all of it. Like I think all of it looks really impossible and daunting if you don't have somebody like stepping you through it.
Right. By the way, I was really about it last night. But what he's saying, that was like a very long way of saying it. It's half of a crow and half of a firefly.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to take your whole entire day, and also I don't know that anybody wants to sit here and listen to us talk all day.
Probably not.
Can we just, before we finish up, I just want to ask you, what correlations do you see between the work that it took you to become a handstander and the work that it has taken you to get as far as you have in life?
I think it is really just shutting down reactivity. I think I used, as a kid, I was really reactive. I would get really upset really easily. I would cry a lot. And through many things, yoga being, I think, chief among them, it teaches you to just sort of like accept something that's happening rather than react to it and freak out and panic. And that definitely served me well at a time when like career prospects were up and down, and I was suddenly getting laid off, or I was suddenly, not getting a promotion, and I could have panicked and freaked out several times, and I just sort of just kept breathing through it, which we're constantly told in class, like when you're doing something, especially when it's something really difficult,
right?
Is like, don't forget to breathe, which sounds,
right,
maybe patronizing, but like it's true. I think if you go through life holding your breath all the time when things get difficult, it's bad news. So don't do that.
The non-reactivity is a huge one. Okay, so guys, I have my Handstand Breakthrough Revolution course, which he did not have the benefit of. It did not exist 16 years ago. I did not have the benefit of. I had to teach myself handstands, which is, I just impart that onto my students, the knowledge that I figured out. Now it's condensed into an 8-week class, which, might have changed things like way back when. No questions today. Feel free to leave them in the comments after this is posted to Facebook. Grant, thank you so much for your time. It's always such a pleasure.
Thank you for 16 years of teaching me how to do all this stuff.
That's also been my pleasure. Have a great day, guys. This is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica and the Handstand Breakthrough Revolution, signing off. Have an awesome day.